Hey, and welcome back to the Simply Fitness Podcast. I'm John Stein, and on today's episode, I got a chance to have a conversation with Shane Hubbard. We had an awesome conversation about the limits of exercise for fat loss and the effects of your environment on your fitness goals. This is a great conversation that we had with Shane today. Hope you enjoy this episode. Started. Hey, Shane, how's it going, my man?
It's going great. How about yourself, John?
Not too bad. We finally got those technical difficulties worked out, so we'll get rocking and rolling. But how's your day been?
It's been good. I don't know where you're at exactly, but it's about middle of the day here. Had some training this morning, got a little workout in, so off to a good start.
Yeah, we're out here in North Carolina. It is hot. It is humid, and it is definitely summer. That is for sure. Been a nice scorcher. Was feeling 105 yesterday. I did not go outside. Man. That can't
be fun with the humidity either. Like we have a very dry heat here in California, so I can't imagine it with the humidity.
Oh, I sweat like nobody's business. You just get used to when you walk out the door that you're gonna instantly like have a layer of moisture on your skin, right. And that's just what you got to live with. So you get used to it after a while. But so let's get rocking and rolling into this podcast today. So I know we've talked a little bit about what we were going to talk about and kind of got this idea from some of the stuff that you've been posting recently. And I know you did a deep dive into this. So I kind of wanted to pick your brain, see what you got and how'd you kind of came along with that. But talking about the limits of exercise for fat loss. So what kind of sparked this idea and what kind of got you into looking into, maybe why exercise has its pros and its cons and its limits to achieving your goals, especially for fat loss?
Yeah. So great question. And thanks for bringing up this topic because I really did want to touch on this at some point. But I think it first started when I just noticed that a lot of people on cardio equipment weren't changing at all, like in terms of body composition. They didn't seem to be losing fat, or the ones that did, a lot of times, because I worked in gyms pretty much my whole life in some kind of capacity, either as a front desk person or as a trainer, and I would start conversations with them like, hey man, you're looking great, or what are you doing? And a lot of them are like, oh, I've been eating better, I've been doing this cardio. Sometimes they would say they were lifting weights, sometimes they weren't. And then I would also befriend a lot of people that weren't changing, but I wouldn't really bring this subject up as much. And I would say, hey, you're looking good, what do you do? And he says, oh, I just I run or I do the elliptical every now and then. And so that's when it first started, and I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then as it became a trainer, I started to notice sort of the same thing with my clients. I naturally in the beginning was not a big proponent of cardio just because I hated it myself. And I made the mistake of like projecting that onto my clients. I'm much more rounded now, so I know the benefits and the side effects of it, especially psychologically. And so anyway, I just started prioritizing nutrition and strength training. And as a coach, I noticed much better results with the people that were strength training and following, a more dialed in and structured nutrition plan. And the people that wanted to spend more of their time doing cardio, I just wasn't seeing those same results, even though they were both after the same thing. So I would have a woman who wants to, tone up or lean out doing a ton of cardio. And I said, hey, just so you know, like I haven't seen that many great results with just cardio alone. And these people typically like to be very cardio like specific. They're like, oh no, like this is what my cardiologist tells me, whatever. And so I'm like, okay, do your thing. Like I'm not going to argue with you, but just so you know. And so anyway, I just started noticing with my own clientele that the ones that got the best results were strength training and dialing their nutrition. And so that's when I dove even deeper into the actual science, because I'm like, this is great and all from an anecdotal standpoint, but like, what does the research show? And I came across there's two different models for aerobic type of exercise when it comes to energy output. And that is the additive model and there's the constrained model. The additive model is exactly what we would think. You burn 2,000 calories a day just being alive. You do 300 calories worth of exercise. You should burn 2,300 calories. And that makes sense. That's the additive model. But there's also another model that's actually shown a lot of merit, and that is the constrained model, which basically says that instead of your body adding the amount of calories you burn to your total, it sort of steals or robs, as I've heard it put, from other sources of ways your body burns calories. So a lot of people don't know, but your body burns calories in like 4 different ways. It's not just, it's not just exercise. So that became fascinating to me. And so it's that side of things. The constrained model is still something I have to dive deeper into, but just that has been shown in some research is very fascinating. And that's when I really took it to the next level and said, okay, I gotta dive even deeper into this, because this could save people a whole lot of time. Certainly doesn't mean cardio is bad. And I'm never going to propose that you shouldn't do cardio if you enjoy it. But for those that feel as though cardio is the only way they can lose fat, I want to provide some actual science-based evidence that that's not true.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just from like a standpoint of like cardio versus, weight loss, and weight training, I think that's like a big kind of question that a lot of people have. What should I be doing at the beginning, and what should I be, if I want results, what should I be doing? And I think a lot of people automatically gravitate towards cardio because it's easier. There's less balance, barrier of entry to do cardio. Everyone knows how to walk for the most part. Anyone can do, a bicycle or, work a treadmill. It's pretty simple, but like weight training has its own barriers that need to be overcome before people can do it. You don't just hop on, even just a weightlifting machine. You don't just hop on it and like automatically know what to do. You got to look at the pictures. Plus then, you have the intimidation factor of everyone else in the room. Like, oh, I'm an imposter here. Like, why am I lifting weights? I'm not, Arnold Schwarzenegger over here. I'm not, this bodybuilder guy, like, why am I over here? Like, that's Absolutely. Fake. So I think that automatically, stops a lot of people, and why people just go towards cardio in the beginning. I think I was the same exact way. I think most people are, but they can say most people don't say, oh, I started lifting weights. That was the first thing I did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you made such a great point with the example of the barrier of entry, because you're 100% right. Just about every person that I've had the pleasure of talking to, I say, well, do you actually like doing cardio? And they're like, no, but it's what I know how to do. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's different. If you like to do cardio, then great. Like, go for a run, go on the elliptical, all more power to you. But like, if you're doing it solely because it's the only thing you know how to do, let me show you this. And you're right. Mm-hmm. Lifting weights is more technically based in a lot of regards, at least for the average Joe and Jane. And so it's easier to just go outside and run versus like go to the gym, figure out how the machines work, or know how to lift weights or any of that.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like, I love to run. Like, I run pretty regularly, and it's just something I've always done and I love to do. And I love to play sports and be active and run around. That's just how I am, but not everyone is like that. And I think that's what a lot of people need to learn, is that like, you don't have to do something you don't like. Like, if you really don't like weight training, there are various forms of weight training, different ways to do it and incorporate it, into your, exercise program. It doesn't have to be the main thing, but it should definitely be in there. That's why they do recommend, at least 2 days a week of exercise, of weight, like resistance training as a minimum. Like, you don't have to do 7 days a week, 5 days a week. You can do a little bit, just add it into whatever you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also too, it's like, I think that when you're new to weight training, you assume that you're going to be like a power lifter. Like that's how you have to have, like, it has to be as heavy as possible. Veins have to be coming out of your forehead. Like, it's like, no, it's like, okay, there's, like you mentioned, there's lots of variations, and a lot of them, for a beginner, at least what I like to do is train the muscle memory, or train the actual movement first before worrying about what weight would work, so I might set up a program that's like, 12 to 15 reps at a lighter weight to get technique and get everything down. And sometimes for some people, it's body weight first. And so understanding there's a beginner form of strength training, that you don't have to go into a gym and start, pounding on the plates and doing leg presses. Yeah. So that also, I think, I've found that to be very encouraging for a lot of people, to know that there are things you can do as a beginner that aren't super intimidating.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think I agree with you. I think people go into this mindset that like that next day they're going to turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger if they like, they have to do exactly what he's doing, or they're not doing it at all. It's like, no, like you have to learn the movements. And then that's where you appreciate the movements. Most people don't go into weightlifting loving deadlifts. You got to learn those movements. And then people are like, wow, I actually really like this. And I like how this feels. I'm going to try to get as strong as I can in this movement. That's how most people go. It's why people love to squat, deadlift, bench press. They learned how to do it. And now they want to get as strong as they possibly can in that movement. It's because people love those movements.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to kind of go back on one of the points you made about, like sort of the barrier of entry. I know that for a lot of my female clients or female, weightlifters, or I shouldn't even say female weightlifters, people that want to start lifting weights but don't want to get too bulky. There's this sort of idea that weightlifting, overnight turns you into a She-Hulk or, the Hulk. And it's like, I wish, because dang, that would be amazing, for those that want, a lot of muscle mass. But yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of times what I'll have that conversation is I'll say something like, well, give me show me a photo of, a woman's body that you would, maybe like to emulate or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they'll say, oh, I like the way, her muscle tone is and things like that. And like, she lifts weights, I'll say that straight up, like she lifts weights, like she's not getting that way from doing tons of cardio. And so I think that more now than ever, there's been a lot of women coming out saying, I lift weights to look this way. And there's a lot of women watching that going, oh, wow. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. Because I think beforehand there wasn't that. And as a guy, I can only do so much to convince, through science. A lot of times it has to be sort of maybe a
role model.
A role model, or it has to come from a woman because they're women. They have different experiences as human beings and all that stuff. So I could sit on my, scientific pedestal, so to speak. And so this is the right thing to do. But, I think learning from experience or friends that have gone through that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think, I can even think of an example right now, like if you ever follow Ben Bruno, he's a big personal trainer and stuff. And I think like Kate Upton, I don't think most women would want to be like, they always think that they want to be like a model. And then you follow his page and he has her deadlifting hundreds of pounds of weight. And people think that like, you're going to get big and bulky. I'm like, would you call her big and bulky? And she lifts weights. Like, I think that's what that stigma is slowly starting to evaporate, that weightlifting isn't just about gaining muscle. It's about gaining strength, and like all the other things that come with that. Confidence is probably the biggest one I can think of. And then strength, not just physical strength, but mental strength. If you can lift 100 pounds off the floor, like that's just going to make you feel like a boss. Like you're just going to feel like nothing can stop me. I can lift this weight. Like, whatever stress is going on in your life, like that's why people go to the gym and they love weightlifting, because it gives them that sense of confidence and, mental fortitude to be like, I can do anything. If I can lift that weight, I can lift off whatever problem I have in my life, whatever it may be.
100%. I still remember when he posted the photo of her doing sled pushes with it was a ridiculous amount of weight. It wasn't something I had expected. And I was like, whoa. I sent it to one of my female clients and she was like, oh my God. I was like, exactly what you said. I was like, was the body of Kate Upton, would you consider her bulky? And she goes, no. And I go, well, look how much weight she's pushing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's good to break that stigma, because again, I still think it's evaporating, like you mentioned, but I still think it's prevalent in some of the beginner communities.
Yeah, it's definitely something that needs to overcome. So kind of getting back to this, the limits of exercise in general. Something that I think we kind of touched upon, talking about cardio in general, but how important would you say is just movement in general? So like for someone who's literally going from couch to trying to start exercise, maybe weightlifting is too much of a barrier to begin with. So like, how important would you explain to someone how important is just moving in general? So getting some type of movement in. It's
the most important thing. And I think that another sort of philosophy that I have is understand where you are and +1 that. Like, I think a lot of times we expect ourselves to, and I would say us included, like in our own right, to go from like, being a couch potato, so to speak, to going and running a marathon, or like, setting these out, achieving these very large goals in such a short amount of time.
Yep.
One of the reasons why I like to have sort of an onboarding phase with all of my clients is because I want to understand where they already are. Too many diets and too many approaches to changing your health go from 0 to 60 without considering 1, 2, 3, and all the steps in between. So like, let's say that for the sake of argument that you have, you average 2,000 steps a day. Like, that you have a step counter, it says 2,000. You might expect somebody, some coach might say, or you might, read online, oh, you need to average 10,000 steps a day. Well, to someone who's doing 2,000 steps, that's like changing their entire life in an instant. It's like, no, okay, that's sort of the finish line. Let's think about the next step in front of you, that sort of 1% better. And for me anyway, that's 3,000 steps, and that might sound like a lot, but when you consider the time commitment, 1,000 steps of casual walking is about 10 minutes, which is very doable for most people. So that's what I would say. I would say essentially, listen, if you're just sort of someone who sits on the couch or isn't that active, just try to be a little more active and in whatever way works best for you.
Yeah, I think people always, again, I think this is just like people are maybe sometimes over eager, or they think they have to dive into the deep end like right away. Like they can't just dip their toe or, just put their foot in, take a step at a time and work their way up to getting there. Like everything counts. Like, I think I try to instill that in my clients, like every little bit counts, like every meal that you get, every, vegetable you get every day, every glass of water you drink every day, every, 5-minute walk you take, that's going to be better than if you did nothing. Like if you didn't eat the vegetable, or if you didn't, if you sat and watched Netflix for 3 hours instead of taking 30 minutes to go for a walk and then watching, 2 hours of Netflix. There you go. Like you were already better than where you already were.
Absolutely. And the other thing I think is fascinating, and I obviously include myself in this, is this sort of like black and white thinking. Like I know, like the all or nothing thinking mindset, but I think it's interesting as us as human beings, we're either all in or all out until we learn that there's gray area that we can explore. And I've noticed that with, I wouldn't say my more advanced clients, but my clients that I've been working with for longer, and even myself for a very long time, is it's like, if I can't do 3 strength training workouts like I'm used to doing, somehow doing nothing seems, like maybe not the right thing to do, but it seems just as worth as doing like 1 workout a week. And it's like, no, just because the standard has been set for you to do 3 times a week, life happens. If you have to know how to adjust your standards based on your situation and your current lifestyle. Like when COVID first hit and everyone's life out of the, basically existed outside of a gym or, at home for the most part, I had to teach my clients. I created several videos. It's like, listen, you have to change your standards. You're not going to have the same, you can't measure yourself in the same way. You can still measure the frequency, but you have to measure in a different way. And I think that's such an important message too, because ideal situations are very rare in life, in any avenue. Sure. So it's like, if you can learn how to get 50%, which is better than 0%, you have to look at it that way. You have to look at it like 50% is better than 0 instead of, I only got 50, I should be giving 100. No, that's what's going to kill your momentum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were just talking about this, the podcast that dropped today with Vinny, and he was talking about his summer of thickness. And it's all about the mindset of that, like everything has changed, especially right now. Like maybe not, life doesn't always have to be as dramatic as it is right now, but like you have to adjust your goals accordingly. This summer, might have been a time where most people get lean, they want to show off the progress they've made, but maybe this summer that's just not possible. Like you're not able to, maybe do as much, of a calorie deficit as you normally would because you're trapped at home, bored eating, your mental state, everything like that. Maybe you can't get as good at workouts in as you normally would have at a gym because you're at home and you only have body weight stuff. So maybe you can't do as much strength training as you think. You have to adjust your goals accordingly. Maybe you just go to maintenance and focus on another goal, or maybe you start running, whatever it may be but you have to adjust accordingly and be okay with it. If you're not as lean as you want to be, but you can't get there right now, like, why are you stressing about it? Like, there's no like you're the only one judging you. You have to be okay with it, and everyone else will be okay with it.
Yeah, exactly. And that is such a mindset thing. It's such a, how do I adjust to the situation? I actually had a woman who I never officially trained her, but I was a trainer at the gym that she worked out, and we became friends. And as I moved on from that gym, we became friends or stayed friends on social media. And she said that, following my content through quarantine, the one thing that she learned, sort of the silver lining through all of this, is just how important, or I should say, how much more her nutrition affected her body composition. She's a power lifter. So nutrition has only ever been sort of beneficial to her and motivating to her to fuel her powerlifting. And then when she no longer could powerlift, she goes, I gained I think she said it was 12 pounds during the first month and a half. And I was like, okay, and she goes, well, how do I reverse this? I said, nutrition is going to be your number one thing right now, because you're not going to get the same effective workouts. And so one of the messages, I'm actually just recorded this. I'm going to post it, I'm sure, on YouTube later this week, but that was one of the biggest learning lessons for me as well. At home workouts, as great as they were, they really weren't, helping me maintain and build muscle like I was in the past. And so my nutrition had to be more dialed in, which was only a benefit to me for sort of revisiting some of the most important mindsets that go into dialing in your nutrition. So in a way, it ended up helping more and more people, but it also gave me a focus that instead of looking at the glass half empty as, oh, I can't work out at a gym, I was like, okay, well, how can I maximize this time? And I tried to help my clients and people that follow me understand the same thing. Yeah,
I think that really is what a lot of people, I think, did over this quarantine, is you have to look at your situation and be able to adapt to it, whatever it may be. And I think that this kind of threw it into, everyone, like a mass amount of people, into a whirlwind. But that's what happens in life. Life situations change, and your fitness and nutrition situation is going to change. It might not change as dramatically as it did a couple months ago or as abruptly, but there are going to be times you're going to move, you might switch jobs, you might have kids, you might have a vacation or, something that changes, and you just have to adapt to it and accept the situation that you're in and go with the flow of, just what life is going to bring you. You're not always going to be able to eat exactly the way you might have wanted to, or work out exactly the way you want to, because of the situation that you're in. And I think a lot of people realize that now that's apparent. They finally learned oh, wait, I'm not always going to have a gym, or I'm not always going to be able to, maybe control my meals as well as I thought I would, because, there's snacks in 5 feet from me. Well, the other, when I'm working, they're a half an hour away from me. So I don't have to worry about snacking, because I'm at home for, maybe 3 hours a day, and then plus sleep. So for those 3 hours, I can prevent snacking. But now I'm home all the time, and it's oh, now it's 2:00 and I know there's a bag of chips over there, and I really don't want to be doing this work. Let me go eat some chips. I think a lot of people realize that they have to adapt to the situation, and they're not always going to have this comfy, cozy gym or, nutrition, sequence. That sometimes you're going to have to adapt.
I can't tell you how many times I had to fight the urge to eat tortilla chips, and to the point where I just stopped buying them, because it was and that was an interesting psychological, I guess, because I knew that going in, as you become a more seasoned trainer, you start to understand and these sort of subtle things that make a big difference on your nutrition. And man, I just there are plenty of days where I gave in, and I'd love to be transparent about that, because it's not as trainers, at least speaking for myself, I'm not some kind of person who has an unlimited amount of willpower, and I've learned how how to harness it. It's no, I've just learned how to set up my environment so that it's much more beneficial for the things that I want to achieve. And that's really it. I still have cravings for all the same foods. It's just, I've tried to change my environment.
Yeah, I think that's the most powerful. I talked to Carrie a couple of weeks ago about this, and it's exactly that. It's the environment that you're in. And now our environment has changed, and if you don't want to be eating something, don't put it in your house. Don't keep it within reach, put it behind something. put it in a cabinet that's on the top shelf. That's a pain in the ass to get to. Mm-hmm. The harder it is to get to, the more least likely you are to actually go and get it and eat it. But if you have that jar of M&Ms just sitting out on your coffee table and you're passing it every day, I guarantee you are going to eat those peanut M&Ms like 150%, unless you don't like peanut M&Ms. And then I don't understand why you have it on your coffee table. But
yeah, and you're probably insane, because who doesn't really love peanut M&Ms?
I know that is a fact too. So it's just
go ahead.
It's just about your environment. Right. People, again, just underestimate that the situation that you surround yourself with is going to be the results you get. If you're in a positive environment, you're going to, you're going to feel positive. If you have junk food around, you're probably going to be eating junk food. If you're eating, if you're always eating out, that's going to be the food you're going to, inherently eat. So. Absolutely.
And, that brings up such a good point, because I don't know if you want to go this way with the topic, but one thing I wanted to touch on is that you'll get some people in some circles that say, oh, well, that's being restrictive, and restriction is, a bad way of going about trying to limit your, food intake of a certain kind. And I'm like, mm-hmm. Okay, so if that's true, if we're just going with that line of logic, then why do alcoholics try to stay away from bars or stay away from situations where alcohol is kind of the main source of the socializing? And it brings up a good point. It's like, if you want your environment if you have a hard time controlling yourself in a specific environment, then it's about removing yourself from that environment, healing yourself, and then learning how to be around it in the future. I'm not saying you have to eliminate it for the rest of your life, but if every time ice cream is in the house, you eat the entire pint, that's not a healthy relationship with food. So let's heal that, and then let's bring it back and reintroduce it. So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
No, I think that's a great point, because, I think a lot of us preach, like, don't eat a restrictive diet. But what we're saying is we're saying really to not be too restrictive. You can be restrictive. You can eliminate foods from your diet that aren't going to get you closer to your goals. If they, A, don't make you feel well, B, just like you just said, I call them trigger foods, like foods that you just uncontrollably eat. I agree. You should, figure out why you uncontrollably eat them and, do that. And then you can slowly incorporate those foods. But it doesn't mean that you have to cut out all foods because you think they're bad. There are no bad foods. I hate that comparison. If you want to have pizza, go ahead, eat pizza. Life's too short to not enjoy pizza. Enjoy the foods that you love to eat. If you love tacos, go have tacos, go have burgers, go have pizza. But learn how to eat those in a controllable way that also help you get your results while also enjoying life, because at the end of the day, that's what all this is about, is enjoying life.
Absolutely. And if you can't control yourself around those foods, then first it's, again, it's about healing that relationship or learning how to have balance. And I want to empower people that temporary restriction is it's not a death sentence. It's not going to be, you're not doomed, right? It's acknowledging that there's something that you need help with or you need to work on, and then reintroducing it back when you're in a better place. Or like I've had lots of people tell me, like, it wasn't even the food that was addicting. It was my environment with my stress was so overwhelming that I was seeking pleasure out so much that it was really, the food was just a vice. And I was like, that's such a great perspective, because a lot of times that's true. It's like, is it the food's fault, or is your environment causing you to seek pleasure out so much that you don't take into consideration the nutrition of that food? And so it's almost used as a drug in a sense. I hate to compare food to drugs, but you sort of get what I'm going with that, is that it's a way to soothe pain.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with you there, that I think sometimes people just get lost, that it's not necessarily the food's fault. Like the food, yes, it might be on an unhealthier side of things, like, eating chips and pizza and Big Macs, for your whole diet probably isn't the best way to go. You're missing a lot of food categories there in nutrition, but there's a reason why you keep going back to those foods. And maybe there is a mental kind of block there. There might be a mindset shift or something mentally going wrong that is stopping you from maybe restricting or holding yourself back from, achieving this weight loss. Like you said, like maybe that food isn't your comfort food and you're enjoying it. Well, now you have to acknowledge that and look at yourself for real. Like, okay, this is why I'm doing this, and seek to heal that, because you can lose all this weight and cut out that food. But at the end of the day, if you're not healing that side of it, your mind and your mindset and, your mental health, you're just going to go right back. You're still going to be that same person. Your body, you might be a little bit less, but you're going to eventually revert back to that old person.
Yeah.
That old body.
Yeah. And you couldn't have said it any better. It's such a fascinating dance between the sort of the psychology and the physiology, because to a certain extent, junk foods do have a very different interaction on our brain. And it does become very hard to control how much of that specific food we want to eat, because, and I don't know if a lot of your audience understands this side of things. And it was fascinating when I first learned it. But just how engineered, like, I don't think people understand how engineered junk foods are. Like there's millions and millions of dollars that don't just go into like making the food. It's like how your brain interacts with the food. A lot of people don't understand that sodas have sodium in them or salt in them so that you drink more. Like they're engineered so that you consume more, so that you buy more, and then they make more money. So it's sort of, I don't want to say playing a trick on your brain, because I think I think you can always override it with your own consciousness, but like there is sort of this play on your brain to consistently want to consume those foods. And if you're in the wrong mental state or emotional state, that can be very exciting. It can be something that you're actually, you look towards because it provides pleasure. And if you're in an environment that's not very pleasurable or you're stressed out, that helps kind of balance things out. And as we know, our bodies love balance. And so if you're really stressed out and you eat junk food, it's a fascinating phenomenon that I think if you learn more about that, you start to go, wow, there's a lot more going on here than I thought.
Yeah. And I think this just goes back to like anything can be advice, food, anything done in too much quantity and not enough moderation can be negative, like exercise, eat, even counting calories. There's always a negative side to everything. Just because you're trying to be healthier or unhealthier doesn't mean that like there can be a disconnect there.
Totally agree. Absolutely.
So I think that's what a lot of people like we need to think about is that, just because you're overeating, a certain type of food, or, you can have other vices other than like that. Like, I think people don't think about food as a vice necessarily. Sometimes I think they discount that because everyone eats, especially nowadays with, the obesity epidemic that we're in, that everyone eats and everyone overeats, and, getting fat is just a thing that people do. I think it's kind of become the norm for some people in some areas. That it's just like, that's fine. Or you're just abnormal because you're in shape and you lost weight and whatnot, and you eat healthy. Right. Like that. Like, I think that's something we have to start normalizing, is that like you can eat healthy and it's normal.
And I think also that our environment as a human race has changed such that like you mentioned, the new norm is being, 45 pounds overweight. And it really, you don't stick out in that in an environment like ours, because the way in which, we could go really depth to this, but like the short of it is that we're spending less time being active, and the amount of calories you can fit into a smaller amount of food has increased. So we've literally gone the opposite direction of everything that has created us from an evolutionary standpoint. It used to be the exact opposite. You used to move a lot more and have a lot less access to calories. So we've basically reversed that. So it makes perfect sense to me that there is an obesity epidemic. Like, if there's a surprise to anyone that there's an obesity epidemic, just understand a little bit more about evolution and where we are now, and it'll make it's a perfect plus this equals this kind of equation.
Yeah, exactly. We can think about everything that helps us, most of our jobs have become sedentary. Most of the things that we do in life become sedentary, watching TV, playing video games, the activities that we do every day have become very sedentary jobs. Now the access to food is just abundant, especially, a lot of this fast food. Like, I'm in the fast food capital of the world. Like, I can think of 30 fast food places within 2 or 3 miles of my apartment right now.
Wow.
Like that's the environment people live in, and people are surprised that people go to these options, and it's like, it's easy, it's convenient. You don't have to think about it. You go there a couple times, you already know what the menu is. So you just order, and it's $3, $5, like some people, like, that's nothing for a meal. Even though if you really priced out a grocery list and, looked at your meals that way, those meals would be a lot cheaper, but people don't do that type of math. So it's like the environment that you're in. If you're driving past McDonald's or like 6, 7, 8 restaurants every single day on your way to work, there and back, there are going to be times, probably at least once to twice a month at minimum, that you're just going to be stressed out, that you're going to be like, I'm hungry. Let me stop at, Wendy's, Bojangles, whatever it may be, like, because I'm stressed, and a hamburger and French fries would be amazing right now. A fried chicken sandwich. That sounds great.
Right. Yeah. Fast food takes out all of the parts that we don't want to do. Like, I don't necessarily want to cook my food like every single day. Like last night was a perfect example. I was in the perfect position to drive by somewhere and pick something up. Now, I've learned my lesson through tons and tons of trial and error. Like, I didn't wake up yesterday and was like, okay, no more fast food. Although some people can do that, but it's just, I know what I'm going to experience 8 hours later when I have food like that, and I'm done. That no longer is, I should say that is now so much more of a deterrent than having to spend a couple of extra minutes preparing something at home. And but that's a learned behavior. Like, I didn't, like, it's not like I got my, certification as a nutrition coach and go, okay, I've had plenty of slip ups, plenty of failures. I've fallen off track 1,000 gazillion times. And it's just now that I'm starting to go, okay, I've learned my lesson, and maybe that's a good thing to touch on really briefly too, is it's like, it doesn't matter how many mistakes you make as long as you keep trying to get better. Like, there's no like a mistake amount where you hit it and you go, okay, there's no turning back. It's like, no, you could make 10 mistakes and learn a lesson, or make 1,000 mistakes and learn a lesson. Just learn the lesson. Right. That's such an important, that made a huge, that basically transitioned, or helped me evolve as a person and as a coach. Is just that mindset is like, there's no amount of mistakes you're going to make that are going to, ruin your life as long as you don't give up.
Yeah, exactly. That's always kind of been my motto that I've tried to, over the last couple of years. It's, you can't mess this up. The only way to mess it up is to give up. Mm-hmm. Like that's the end all goal. Like you can't mess up your life. Like, there are very few ways that you just permanently mess up your whole entire life. The only way you mess up is if you stop trying and you just give up. If you just give up, of course, you're not going to ever move forward. If you stop working on your goal, if you want to get better at something, if you stop doing it, you're never going to get better at it. Like, there's no ounce, there's no injection or magic pill someone's going to give you that's going to make you better at whatever you're trying to do. Like, you might mess up. Like, I think every coach has messed up, and they will continue to mess up, towards their goals at some point. They're going to have a bad meal. They're going to miss a workout. Like, everybody, that's every person. That's just a person thing, not just a you thing. It's everybody. Everybody messes up. And I think, what was that? I was watching Gary Vee the other day, and he put out the hashtag, everyone sucks too. Like, we all suck. Like, we all suck. Like, once you get over that and you just realize that, like, we all suck, like, everybody sucks, and like, you're not failing, like, everyone's highlight reel on Instagram or whatever, whatever social media platform, like you don't know anything that's going on behind those scenes. Like, we all suck. Like, we all fuck up. We all mess up. And so, like, once you accept that you're going to mess up, like, it just becomes so much more free. Like, the only one responsible for yourself is you. So just focus on you and don't worry about what other people are thinking, what what else everyone's doing. Like everyone else sucks.
Yeah. And that's such a great thing to bring to the forefront. And that's one of the reasons why I love Gary Vee. He's so raw and honest, and he's not interested in sort of the glamour and the, and I think a lot of us that have watched his stuff, especially content creators like you and I, have just learned how important that is for us. For me, having to do 100 takes of a video, like I can't tell you how many times I've done a YouTube video. Just last week I did one, and I did a 30-minute YouTube video, and the audio didn't come through. Like my microphone wasn't plugged in, and I'm like, so I had to do it on Tuesday, edit it on Tuesday. Anyway, long story short, I didn't just say, oh, screw it, let's give up. I said, okay, this is going to not be the most polished product, but I've made a commitment to get it out on Wednesday. I'm going to do whatever I can, and it's going to come out. So having that same mindset with your nutrition or your workouts has to be the exact same if you want to be successful.
Yeah, agreed. Like you're going to miss a workout. Like there is not a single person in the entire world that's been on a workout program and has never missed a workout.
Right.
There are probably few people in this world, maybe Michael Jordan never missed a workout, but or LeBron James or something like that. But like people miss workouts. You're going to miss a meal. You're going to have a bad day. And you know what? Everyone else is too. At some point, there's no one has great days every day. No one has great meals every day. And once you just kind of accept that in your mind, I know it's a hard thing, and it's not something that, I've come to overnight. It's still something I, strive to be. And, I wish I cared less about what other people thought of me, and what I think people are going to perceive. But every day, if you work 1% better every single day, like that adds up. So don't beat yourself up because you missed one thing. Like,
absolutely.
You don't fail. Like you didn't mess up. You got a little off track. Just turn the wheel a little bit. You're right back on track.
Yeah. Success is not built from perfection. It's built from consistency. Like I try to get that in my clients as soon as they, just my message overall as a coach. It's like, I didn't get to where I'm at. Some of the most successful people in the world didn't get to where they're at because they were perfect, because that's, first of all, it's not attainable. And second of all, it's about the consistent effort towards, like, I get the idea of like trying to achieve perfection is sort of like a carrot in front of the horse type of thing. But to ever think that you're going to get there, no, that's going to derail your consistency. But sure, give 100% every single time. And that's all you can do is do that.
Yeah. I think that's huge too. Like you want to try to be as on track as possible, but don't beat yourself up if you fall off track. If you're at 99% instead of 100, like that's still huge. If you're at 81%, that's still huge. Like even if you're at 50%, that's huge. Like just because you didn't fall at 100% didn't mean that you didn't get closer to your goal or achieve your goal. So
absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I couldn't say it better.
Yeah. So I think everyone needs to take a step back sometimes, give themselves a break and just, move on forward, take the next step, tomorrow. Just because you fell off flat on your face today doesn't mean you can't get back up and take another few steps. Everyone falls. Awesome. So Shane, I think that we had a great conversation. I don't want to hold you up too long, but where can everybody find you?
So probably the most consistent place I'm right now is actually TikTok. Like I started a TikTok and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm posting there at least a couple times a day. And then if you want to find some more of my, longer form content, at least a couple of minutes, go over to my Instagram at Shane Hubbard Fit. Same thing on TikTok. So TikTok, it's Shane Hubbard Fit. Instagram, it's Shane Hubbard Fit. And then if you want to check out my YouTube channel where you can get, a lot more in-depth stuff, you just type in Shane Hubbard Fit there as well. The only one that's slightly different is my podcast, which is the Barbells and Burgers podcast. If you really want long form content, like half hour plus, that's a good place to check it out. And so those are some places where you can see more of my stuff.
Perfect. I'll throw your Instagram link in the show bio. So if you want to follow Shane, check out his stuff, awesome content, you can find him there. Shane, thank you for coming on the podcast. And hopefully we can get you on again. It was a great conversation, and you enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Simply Fitness podcast. Because you listened to this episode, I want to give you something away for free. In the show notes, I have a link to my free fat loss cookbook. This cookbook contains over 20 recipes that are specifically designed to help you lose weight. They are filled with protein, they are simple to make, and they take away that bland, boring diet food. So if you want to upgrade your diet today, go to the show notes, click on the link, and go get your free fat loss cookbook. And make sure you come back for more episodes of the Simply Fitness podcast.